If you are an entrepreneur, you can build a company and you can grow. But if the premise of your business is that you can have growth quarter after quarter, year after year at an infinite scale, that is not true. We have
Mm,
clearly run out of planet. And
right.
so your metric of success should not be growth, it should be sustainability. What
Mm.
is the longevity of what you're creating? Not how much can you maximize growth in order to get more than you need.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumitech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello and welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Meet Minal Bopaiah, founder and principal consultant at Brevity and Wit. Minal is the author of Equity, How to Design Organizations Where Everyone Thrives. She's the founder of Brevity and Wit, a strategy and design firm that combines human-centered design, behavior change science, and the principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility to help organizations transform themselves and the world. Bopaiah has written for the Stanford Social Innovation Review and The Hill, and has been a featured guest on numerous podcasts and shows, including The Kojo Mahdi Show on WAMU. She has also been a keynote speaker for many conferences, inspiring thousands with her credible, authentic, and engaging talks. Minal Bopaiah, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Michael. It's really a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure having you here. Where are you calling from in the world right now?
So I am in the greater DC area in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is right outside DC.
I love it. So, Minal, so many different experiences, so many things for us to talk about. But I'd love to concentrate on your most recent efforts with the book that was recently published in September, talking about equity. And obviously, this is a topic of conversation in the last few years, mainly in this last year or two, I believe, that's becoming really, really mainstream. But your work, is interesting all around, and with brevity and wit. And so I'd love to learn a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into equity, what that means to you, why you decided to dedicate so much of your time into this, and what we're seeing, in greater trend about the world. So, Minal, who are you?
Sure. So I am the author of Equity, How to Design Organizations Where Everyone Thrives, which has been published by Barrett Kohler. I am also the founder and principal at Brevity and Wit, which is a strategy and design firm that combines human-centered design, behavior change science, and the principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility to help organizations transform themselves and the world.
Okay, so I heard a lot of really interesting things here. Let's dig deep into this. What
Sure.
is where is the human centered design and the behavioral science? How did those come into play when we're talking about the question of equity and diversity in the workplace?
Yeah. So there's a fundamental truth that we have to acknowledge that the system isn't broken. It is actually working exactly the way it was designed to work. So, you know, most systems of oppression have been designed to privilege some at the expense of others. In the
Mm-hmm.
United States, that is primarily centered around race and gender and sexuality and disability status, right? And so when we're talking about being able to create a more equitable world, we have to start with designing more equitable systems that really gives everyone a fair shot at opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And so this distinction of it's not that its system is broken or
Mhm.
it's working as it was designed. Why is this an important distinction in your mind that we sort of
Yeah.
converge on?
I think there's a basic assumption or myth that the world is somehow neutral and that the results that we have are somehow the natural outcome of just people's efforts. And
Mm,
that, we're all working in some sort of neutral system. And that's not true. We like to perpetuate this myth, particularly in the entrepreneurial circles, that hard work equals success. Now, it's not that hard work isn't important, but that equation is not the complete equation. The actual equation is hard work plus system support equals success. And that we have done a very good job about talking about the virtue of hard work, but we have done a very poor job of unmasking how the system is supporting certain individuals. So, for example, of the Fortune 500, 70% of the CEOs have a spouse that does not work outside the home. It is
Interesting.
almost impossible to be a CEO if you are not married, like, and particularly have a family, if you are not married to someone who is going to pick up all of that labor at home for free.
Right. That makes intuitive sense as well.
Right. And so then when we talk about why aren't there women CEOs or why aren't there more CEOs of color, the question is how many of those people have somebody who lives with them full time who is going to pick up the slack?
Right.
How many women have a husband like I do who did all of the housework while I wrote my book?
Right. Right.
Right.
And
So if
obviously
we,
that's not proportional. Yeah.
yeah. And so if we don't have that support, then we can't ascend to these places of power and success. And so the fact is, it's not that we're not working hard enough, it's that the system has not been designed with us in mind.
As you're now looking at the world, what does it take to design a system that has this in mind? What are some either very pragmatic or theoretical steps that we need to take into account as we're aiming for obviously that type of world?
So we want to think about who has this organization been designed for in the past and how
Mm-hmm.
relevant is that today? And then how do we center some of the people who have been pushed to the margins in our redesign, right? So, for example, most organizations, like I said, have been designed for straight white men in mind in like the
Mm-hmm.
1950s, right? Where they could
Right.
commute to work, where they had a spouse who was picking up all of the emotional and cognitive labor of the home, where they could one income could send your kids to college and buy you a house and allow you to save for retirement.
Right.
That does not exist for most people, including
Correct.
the majority of straight white men. So,
Right.
what if we were to put a different identity at the center of our organizations? What if we were to design for single mothers, right? Right now, we have a legacy where if you go on a sales call, you can expense alcohol and drinks and entertainment as a viable business expense. Because back in the days, in like Mad Men era, that was what you needed to do to close an account, right?
Right.
But if you're a single mother, your most critical need to being able to close that deal is childcare. So why is it that we
Interesting.
cannot expense childcare that's needed to make a sales call, but we can expense alcohol?
Right. Right.
Right?
And
So we would
so
redesign not only like the nature of work, but the nature of business and what are viable expenses and what's actually considered an expense versus an asset and an investment.
right, and I think that what you're touching on here, and extrapolating through that example, obviously, by now allowing more people, and whether it's gender or different minority groups to own these positions, then you're actually
Mhm.
able to have more qualified people, in your business, making your business more profitable. And it's not just good for those people that are able to hold these positions, but ultimately it's better for the companies, because obviously also we're seeing what's happening with talent, and it sounds like beyond just the regulatory aspect of it and beyond just the theoretical really
Mhm.
nice idea of equity, it's actually good for business as well. This is a win-win for everybody. These
Yeah,
changes
well,
of
because
opinions.
diversity drives innovation, because on the flip
Right.
side of that equation, your customer segment is also diverse.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And so you cannot just have the same people designing for experiences that they don't even understand. I
Right.
would love it if Netflix would create a filter where I could say that I don't want to see any recommendations that have rape in them.
Right.
It would probably get rid of about 90% of content, but nevertheless, I would use that filter every day. And whenever I have pitched this idea, every other woman in the room is like, yeah, I would use that filter every day too. But if you
Interesting.
don't have women as coders who are running these algorithms, then you don't have that idea in your company.
Right. Right. Now, as I go on my own entrepreneurial journey, or any of my friends that are starting companies, what are some really key things to keep in mind strategically or tangibly as we run our company to make sure that we do have this diversity and equity?
So, well, it depends how much do you want to blow people's minds? Like, how radical do you want to get with this? Because um,
How
on a
radical
sm-
do you think we need to get?
I think we need to get to the point where we realize that infinite growth is a myth.
Okay.
If you are an entrepreneur, you can build a company and you can grow. But if the premise of your business is that you can have growth quarter after quarter, year after year at an infinite scale, that is not true. We have
Mm.
clearly run out of planet.
Right.
And so your metric of success should not be growth, it should be sustainability. What
Mm.
is the longevity of what you're creating? Not how much can you maximize growth in order to get more than you need. So the difference between so we talk in the book about power and that there are supremacist approaches to power and liberatory approaches to power. Supremacist approaches to power are fundamentally about taking more than what one needs. Liberatory approaches to power are about using our power to connect and heal and repair our society, to embrace differences, which means that not every company and not every product has to be for every person.
Right.
That if you're able to say, if you're able to really target and be like, this is the type of individual that we're designing for. And I would say that that shouldn't be based on demographics, but rather psychographics, right? That we're designing for single mothers or single parents, or we're designing for couples who don't have children, or we're designing a streaming service with women and non-binary people in mind, and how would they want to view content? Or how would they want to play a video game, right? And so by diversifying, by segmenting out and then building for those sort of specialized segments, that will drive innovation. And then like disability. So text messaging was created for the deaf and hard of hearing, but now we all use it. Audiobooks were created for the blind, and now we all use it. So actually
Wow.
for designing for those segments in mind, when they are the center of your customer segment, you will probably fall upon an innovation that serves a greater population. But you need to stay true to
Interesting.
that segment and not sell them out in order to have more profits and money.
Where is your passion in this? Where is the passion coming from? To the point where you're sitting down and you're writing a book about this, and you're dedicating so much thought and energy into this topic.
Yeah.
An uphill battle that is really changing culture, changing the way people think, changing the way today we just in this conversation we already got to layers talking about how businesses should be even measured. I mean, we're talking about pretty dramatic changes to these ecosystems. Where is this passion coming from?
Um, I mean, I think I always, I grew up on Staten Island, which is a very weird place to grow up as like a smart, dark-skinned girl. And that was pretty sensitive, and it's a pretty aggressive place. I mean, I describe Staten Island as all of the aggression of New York with none of the arts and culture. And so I just had a real early sense that the world was not rooting for me. And as someone who loved being a writer, I was always trying to look for the words to express what I was feeling viscerally, for which there isn't a lot of language around. But then I also have a degree in psychology, and so I have that ability to go deep very fast. And so it wasn't just about self expression, it's about understanding the root causes of that experience. And the
Mm,
root causes of that experience is how our system is designed, and what we hold to be true, the assumptions that we make that we think are unquestionable, such as infinite growth and scale, right?
right.
And really being willing and brave enough to look at those things and question, are those things really true? Are those really in our best interest? You know, who benefits from us believing that and who doesn't benefit from us believing that?
Take me back. middle school, elementary school, Staten Island. You mentioned writing.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's thinking critically about the world and about businesses and culture. Where's your curiosity and fascination as you're simply roaming the earth, as a middle schooler or elementary schooler?
Oh God, I don't know if I want to flash back to those years, but I mean, it was just me trying to make sense of the world, right? Like I was, my generation of Indians is often like the second gen of our parents who were immigrants. Um, and I was the eldest in my family, so there was also this sense of like having to figure it out for the rest of the family. Um, and you know, um, and I think if I had to do it over again, I majored in English in college, and then I got a degree in clinical psychology. I think if I had to do it over again, I probably would have gone into anthropology because my mentor
Wow.
is an anthropologist, and that's the lens she even brings to organizational DEI work, right? Which is, anybody who studies anthropology, it's not just studying the human experience, but how human beings organize themselves. So how
Sure.
does power show up here? Who's included, who's excluded, how are values like justice and equality enshrined or acted upon in this like sort of organizing of humans, whether that's an organization itself or a society, right? So I think that's sort of the lens that I bring to a lot of this work.
I love it. And if I were to ask people around you, how would you describe Minal? What are a few words that they would use in your mind?
Authentic would probably be the top of the list. I think for the people who really know me, brave. And I think that people who have experienced me in a professional capacity probably brilliant.
I love it. Those are great choices. Minal, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. This conversation, I think, is a conversation needs to be spoken, heard, and mainly thought about. And having these conversations, really rigorously, because I think that there is obviously a consensus of the importance of what we're talking about, and now I think that the real question is the implementation and what actually do we need to do to move the needle so that maybe not in this generation, but in the next generation and the one that as we're approaching the new generation of entrepreneurs and companies. How do we fix the culture from the get-go and not try to go and change the ones that have already disrupted it from the ground up? So thank you for the time and energy, and I really appreciate it. And stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.